We're exploring moments today. Our lives are made up of moments each and every day, and it's funny, Blair Primus from Ortho Carolina put me on to the Here's the Thing with Alec Baldwin podcast. So if you haven't heard that yet, it's highly addictive. And he's surprisingly a great interviewer. But he was interviewing Howard Schultz, and there was this one moment in that conversation that really struck me. He was talking about back in 1985 when he had no income coming in. He was out there just trying to make it happen. And his wife was 7 months pregnant, and his father-in-law flew in from Ohio and took him out to the park and had a heart-to-heart with him and said, look, you got to understand how I'm seeing this, right? My daughter is 7 months pregnant. You don't have a job. You have no income coming in. I need you to go out there and get a job. And he admits that he cried in that moment. He was embarrassed. He felt like it was all over. And he went home that night, and in the privacy of their bedroom, he shared with his wife that conversation that he had had with her father. And in that moment, she looked at him and said, no, you're going to stay on it. You're going to keep with it. And so I'm so interested in that moment. The next year in 1986, he did open his first coffee shop, and he named it Starbucks, and we all know what happened from there. But what I'm interested in is that moment where she looked at him and she chose possibility. She chose faith. She chose the dream. And I think we have those moments that land in front of us and zoom by us every single day. We have those moments that we can make those choices. And that's one of the reasons we're here, is to encourage you to choose possibility, to choose the dream, and to lean on us to help you achieve it.
I love this theme of moments because music is all about moments. Music is ephemeral. Moments like this, when an artist gets to share with an audience and you create that special electricity between the artist and the audience. I mean, you all know it. Stuff sounds different live. And that's because of that connection and that moment.
Thank you so much. Beautiful. Once more, everyone. Katie Oates. All right, so here we are, our main event. I'm so excited to bring this amazing guy up, Logan Cyrus. So Logan is a celebrated independent photojournalist, but first, he served 6 years as a Navy corpsman, where he had 2 combat tours in the Iraq War. When he left the Navy, he moved to Charlotte with his wife and attended the Art Institute of Charlotte, where he graduated with a BA in photography. He then worked as the staff photographer of Charlotte Magazine, which eventually led to a full-time freelance career. These days, he's a regular contributor to the New York Times and the Washington Post, and he works for a diverse list of clients nationally and internationally. And last September, he captured a photograph, a moment in our city, that Time Magazine recently named one of the top 100 photos of 2016. So that says a lot about his eye as an artist, as a creative as well. Here to speak to us on the global theme of moments, please welcome Charlotte's very own Logan Cyrus, everybody.
Good morning. Thanks, Creative Mornings, for having me. Typically not my thing to do this. Speaking in front of people, I'm typically behind a camera, kind of observing. So Bear with me if I get a little nervous, but figured that would be the response. That's my son, Ben. He was born almost a year and a half ago. When I was asked to come here and talk about moments, I kind of thought about certain moments in my life, certain things that kind of define me as a human being. Because you can kind of take moments a lot of different ways, especially when it pertains to photography. There's a French, I believe he's French philosopher, Roland Barthes. He wrote a book about it, about what photography is and what it means and how it kind of applies and what makes a picture. But I really don't want to talk about that. I kind of want to talk about the way that moments can shape you into a creative person, and how moments can kind of, play a role into who you are. Obviously, when you make something, I believe a lot of people in here are people that probably consider themselves creative or makers. And as you probably already know, if you make something and you make it come from a place that's real and a place that you know and experienced, it usually has a much better reaction, and it's accepted more and people can connect with it more, aside from just doing it to do it. When I work, I really try to kind of look and see the world that I'm photographing. A lot of times, especially now, we can be pretty distracted. I can be pretty distracted too. So I try to see the world before I photograph it. If I see it, then I can understand it more. If we're not looking at the people around us and the people who are influencing our lives and the people that we're photographing with our phones or our digital cameras, we can't really understand who they are. So I think that creeps into my photographs because I'm just kind of interested in that. I'm constantly searching for people who might see the world the same way I do, maybe not so much the same political ideologies or the same religious aspects, but the same types of people who are looking for something in the world, something that's not tangible, something that kind of, we can fall back on and rely when things get more difficult. I didn't become a photographer for the reasons I just gave you. I didn't know that that's what photography would mean to me as I stand here talking to you. But it becomes more evident each passing year that that's why I am a photographer. So anytime that I can tell a story or make somebody understand a situation better, I feel like I'm doing my job. So to kind of explain the rest of that, I kind of want to tell you a little bit about me and my moments, the moments that kind of shaped me as a human being. Obviously, this one's the first, little Ben. This was the morning after he was born. My wife and I didn't really talk about it, but we really thought that it was better that we just have that moment for us, the moment that he was born. And as a photographer, you have this strong desire, I'm not going to have this opportunity to be in this situation very often, I really would just like to record it or, have a picture on my phone of this moment that only my wife and I can share. But I think the fact that there's no picture doesn't matter. So when I see this picture from the day the night after he was born, just being Ben. So this is, I grew up in the country. I'm from Ohio. Ohio people, all right. Yeah, I see that you're living in Charlotte now, which is, I think, most people just travel down 77 and end up here. But I grew up in the country. I remember one summer, neighbors' cows got out, and they had to hire cowboys to come on horseback to wrangle them back into the pens. So this is my sister and I, Jess. I looked at this picture, and I couldn't remember what was going on, but as I looked at it a little harder, I think we both have chicken pox. So my mom decided that she would document that for posterity. My best friend growing up, aside from my sister, there was 6 years difference. So if you have siblings and have a 6-year separation, you don't really become close friends. But I only had one grandparent. And that was my grandma. My mother's parents died when she was really young, and then my father's father died before I was born. So she was kind of it. And when I wanted to get away from my house, I'd spend weekends with her, and we'd watch Golden Girls and Murder, She Wrote, which is great. Yeah, I can't look at Angela Lansbury and not think of my grandmother. Death is kind of a pivotal moment in my life. It kind of followed me throughout my childhood. My grandma died when I was my first year in high school, and it was hard because she was my friend. You know, she was part of my support group. I didn't have a lot of people in my life. I had a small family, so you know, she was really an inspiration. She was the one that kind of, you know, helped mold me into the person I am today. She was anytime we'd go out, you know, she just knew everybody and be friends with people, and even people she didn't know, she would be kind to them, and that made an impression on me at a very young age. This is my father. This is at Kelly's Island. We were going to go fishing, I assume. I had a pocket fisherman. I don't know if people remember that. I'm only 33, but we just had like this pocket fisherman with us that I'd bring out. It was kind of my size. But yeah, my father died when I was, I guess, in high school as well. So the running theme of death just kind of followed me my entire life. And I don't know if anybody in here lost a parent young or a close relative young. It makes you kind of grow up quickly. It makes you kind of see the world differently because you're kind of faced with these real hard questions. It can be kind of tough at times, especially as a young man growing up without a father. So you end up kind of looking at the world a certain way too. And but this picture was taken with my family camera. It was a 110 film camera. If you guys are familiar with that, it's very, very thin. It's got like a skinny part in the middle and two round things on the end. And that was like the first camera I ever used to make pictures with. And I remember the first time I actually like wanted to make a picture of something. It was actually on Lake Erie. There was the freighters would come through the St. Lawrence Canal, so they'd pass by, and you could look at them, and in the summertime, storms would come, and you could see these clouds roll in, and there was a blue sky background with this freighter and these big dark clouds coming in, so I thought, like, I want to make a picture of that. So I got my camera, the 110, and I went out in the yard and made a picture. The flash went off, and I had to wait like 2-3 weeks or so, like however long it took to get the film back when I got home, but when I looked at it, the picture was underexposed, and the trees, if you know anything about photography, the trees that I was standing under were illuminated by the flash, and it just didn't happen. So just like any kid, you know, it's interested with photography, but it was mostly benign. So it wasn't until I kind of grew up and became a little more of an actual human being, I guess I could say. So my grandmother died my freshman year. And then, you know, I really didn't care about schoolwork that year. I kind of fell behind, failed all my final exams, and had to repeat ninth grade, which it's a hard pill to swallow at that age because, you know, I don't know if anybody of you has failed a grade before, but having to think about, you know, going back to school the next year and having to face your friends, you know, advancing on and you're staying behind. So I think my mother kind of recognized that, and she could see I was struggling, so she put me in a school, private school, about 20 minutes from my house. And it was a really small school. My graduating class was actually 12 people, which is not a lot, so you get really close with your classmates. And my dad died that summer I was supposed to start school. So going from my grandmother dying to switching to school, and then right before I start losing my father, it was kind of rough. But the school that I was about to start in a few months, the whole high school came. And when I went over this to my wife, I was like, oh, you know, it's going to be the hard part. But when he died, they all came and they didn't know me, and they all hugged me as they came in the door. I think that changes you as well. It teaches you a lot about, life. Even as a kid, you can kind of see, like, okay, there's people out there who, they have your best interests in mind, and they care about you. And even if you don't know somebody, you can still have compassion. And it doesn't matter how old you are, it's something that's just kind of ingrained in you. That day with those kids coming in to see me at the showing, little did I know that my wife would be one of the people giving me a hug that day. So there she is, high school sweethearts. She's in here somewhere. I don't know where she is. Raise your hand. Oh, she's right there. So we went through high school together. It was a very small school. We spent a lot of time together. On 9/11, we watched the second tower fall in our library, So we've shared, I think, just about every poignant moment that a couple can share together. At this point, my interest in photography was slowly growing. My mother bought me a Minolta 35 millimeter camera with a couple lenses, and I just proceeded to just make pictures of the things that were around me. Here's you can't really see from here, but this is my dog, Sally. I would make a lot of pictures of her. She was a willing participant. As well as Jamie, she would catch a lot of it as well. Sally was my father's dog. I inherited her after he died, so I felt a special connection with her, so I photographed her a lot. When I graduated high school, I started at Ohio University. It was a satellite campus near my house before I was going to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, and was studying photography there. And Sally was one of the first pictures I hand-developed, and I remember seeing for the first time in the darkroom. I don't know if any photographers in here that have done some darkroom work. That first time you're in there and you see the image appear in the developer is kind of a magical experience, which is definitely a moment I won't forget. Being a kid, a lot of different things were kind of swirling around in my mind. Young adult at this point. Decided that I'd get out of studying photography and join the Navy. I had people in my family that had been in the Navy, and being impulsive, I decided to be a corpsman, which is in the medical field, nothing to do with arts or photography at all. So off I went. I think my mother made this picture. I'm on the end there. This is graduation day from Navy boot camp. Moment that I'd remember, like to forget, I don't know, one of the two. From there, I spent some time in Iraq. I brought a camera with me because, even though I was doing this different thing, I still had this kind of desire and need to make pictures. So I ended up making pictures this first kind of deployment I did. A lot of them, were really kind of snapshot quality images. They're not, I wasn't trying to create a cohesive story. I just wanted to kind of document what was happening around me. So as I say grown up, this was, over a decade ago at this point, I go back and look at them, and I can see some intentionality, if that's a word, in some of the photographs. So it just kind of reinforced this idea that the way that I see the world is not stylistically. I can as a photographer say, like, I want to make pictures like this, but I realized by looking at this that I can't get away from who I am as a person. It's intrinsically connected to who I am as a photographer. So whatever pictures I make are going to be the pictures I make because it's just who I am. When I look at this, I could have made this picture. Well, obviously it wasn't in Fallujah yesterday, but I could have made this picture, I feel like, yesterday. As I kind of progressed through in the Navy, I realized that I wanted to get out of the Navy and pursue photography. So the worlds just kind of started to blend together. And what I would do, my last duty station, I worked at a clinic, and I'd get my friends to kind of be my subjects in these kind of weird photos. So this is kind of a critique on the Navy medicine. Sometimes you run into people that might not know what they're doing, but I've heard they've improved, if anybody's watching. So about a year before I got out was the first time that I did any sort of kind of, aside from being in Iraq, kind of world photography. So I went out, the Westboro Baptist Church. I debated whether I should put this in here, but it is a pivotal moment in my life as a photographer. So I wanted to, but they came to Camp Lejeune and they wanted to protest, and so I went and made some pictures. I wore a fedora, which I'm not proud to say. I don't have any pictures of that, luckily. But so yeah, these people came, and for the first time, I was kind of face to face with, something that was different. It had these kind of undertones of what it was like in war, because you're dealing with very negative situations, negative people who are just not the most polite. So as the day went on, I made pictures, and they were all pretty bad. This was one of the ones that wasn't blurry, and a comedian, I think, from a local radio station came and spit orange juice in her face, and then after that, it was kind of over. So the day kind of, it was really strange. After that, I just kind of left Camp Lejeune. My wife and I moved here to Charlotte. Just like Matt was saying, I interned at Charlotte Magazine out of my time at the Art Institute. Actually, Joe Schalante in the front row here was one of my instructors, one of the many good instructors I had at that school that I'm very grateful for. But I went there, I finished, I got an internship at Charlotte Magazine. I begged Rick Thurmond, he's in here too, for a job. After some coercing, he finally said yes. Before that, we covered the DNC and a lot of other kind of things that happen in the city. And I also worked a lot for Creative Loafing. Any Creative Loafing fans in here too? This is actually an assignment. People don't really know this. It was like just a few years ago, the KKK and the National Socialist Movement came to Charlotte and just held a protest. So a lot of these things that are going on in our city, these kind of, the world we live in now is kind of strange, but a lot of this stuff would happen and people would kind of just ignore it. So luckily now, not so much. So I spent a lot of time kind of documenting the city, and I kind of fell in love with this place. When you move here as a creative person, you realize that you can pretty much do whatever you want, because it's not New York. You could actually live in a nice place, have food, have friends. And it can also kind of and grow along with the city. It's a really nice thing to be able to be somebody that has spent a very kind of short amount of time here, but actually can look back and see a lot of different change that's happened around here. So I covered a lot of the different things that went on. This is a picture from the Occupy movement that was here for a few months. I threw this in here because I knew Susie Ford was a speaker. This is, I think, before their tap room was even open. As a college student, I sent them an email, which is a testament to how great they both are. Just said, hey, I'm a college student. I'm just trying to make a portfolio. You mind if I come by your brewery and make some pictures? So I think that's Coco Loco. He's talking about Cocoa Nibs the entire time. If you ever meet Chad and have him tell you about beer, it's probably one of the greatest things, but you need about an hour. This is a shot from the DNC. I don't know if you guys were there. It was just a magical time in the city. Every day, every time I see Rick, I think about that. Sometimes we talk about it and reminisce about how great it was. But Kelly Tripucka, I didn't know about him until I moved here. And that's kind of a nice picture. There's Patrick Cannon. I think everybody remembers Patrick. And then Mayor Claude Felter. This was the day he was being, sworn in. There was a few photographers out waiting for him to come to the government center. It is so strange to me because he just looks like he's got no idea what's going on. And I feel like that, I think at that point, like everybody had that feeling of like, I don't know what's happening. So we got kind of get into, the ordinance that the city was trying to, the amendment they were trying to kind of enact. And it kind of brings us to 2016. This is a moment that I was really kind of happy and proud to have been a part of. I was a stringer for AFP, which is a fire service, and they sent me there to photograph this, and kind of seeing this kind of moment take place was something special. Which brings us to a photograph that, this isn't it, but I made a photograph during the protests. And before I go on, there's some images in here that people might find to be disturbing. You might find that it might stir up emotion. And I just wanted to warn you before I showed it to you, because another part of moments, thinking about moments, is that some moments can really hurt people. Just because it doesn't hurt you, it could hurt somebody else. So when I look at it, it hurts me in certain ways, but it's not going to hurt me in the same way that it might hurt somebody else. So I just want to kind of bring that up before we go on. But so I made a photograph of a young man named Justin Carr. He was shot during the protests on the Wednesday night. These are photographs from the Tuesday night up on Old Concord Road after the day that Keith Lamont Scott was shot. It's just it's a weird thing. You're making photographs. You're out. This is the city that I was a part of, and it's just kind of like surreal to even look at them now. But I want to talk about that picture of Justin Carr a little bit, but I also kind of want to talk about the events that led up to it, which are moments that are connected for me, maybe not everybody else. But as the protests moved up Tryon Street, this woman was standing in the middle of Trade and Tryon, and they were beginning the process of shutting down traffic at Trade and Tryon. If you guys aren't familiar with the reason why protesters are shutting down traffic, they're not doing it because they're being mean. They're doing it because they want somebody to feel what it's like to maybe be oppressed. So it's just trying to get people out of their box to feel a certain way, and maybe that they'll understand a little better. So the way she was standing there, I mean, she knew I was making some pictures, and just her pose, like, she just reminds me of a superhero, and I just kind of love it. And then about 3 minutes after that frame, a car came up. Gentleman was upset that the crowd wasn't letting them pass. So as I walked by, it was hot out, so he had his window down. As I walked by, I heard him rack his slide back, and then everything changed. That was the moment, I think, that to me, kind of the city was, at that point, was almost like vibrating. And then I would say about, what happened was a police officer came up, actually brought the gentleman out of his car, and then there was a single shot that kind of rang out. And so I ran towards where I heard it, and to this day, I think about this, and people ask me, because it's like, well, you're in war, and what that moment could be like, and it was kind of surreal, because when I think about the fact of like running towards that, it felt very familiar in a very kind of terrible way. And when I got there, this was the scene that kind of was waiting. And when I look at this photograph, as a photojournalist, there will be few opportunities where you're able to tell a story like this. As a human being, I'm very ashamed of it. And I'll tell you why, because, I mean, you know why, because it's a hard photograph to look at, and it's a hard situation. I think about Justin Carr's family, and I kind of want people to think about it too. We see these images, and we don't think about the things that come after. On Christmas Day, the New York Times ran this photo, full bleed, in their photo annual. It's a work of journalism that should be represented, but all I kept thinking about was his family and his friends and like praying that they didn't see it, you know, because this is the first Christmas without them, you know, and to think that this photograph that I made was running that big in the New York Times on Christmas Day was horrifying. I mean, I'm proud of it, and there's not many times in my life that'll happen. But I think it's important when I'm talking about this photograph. I feel like it's necessary to talk about that because that is a human being, and you know, some people say that he was shot by another protester. Some people say that he was shot by CMPD. I'm not here to dispute either of those things. When I see it, I think of pure sadness, and I think about a lot of different things, but I also think about the way that everything in my life has kind of, I don't see it encapsulated in this image, but I see how all those things kind of have appropriated me to what I do, you know? And how when you're presented with something such with importance and something like this, you have to be ready. And I think that everything that my life, you know, death and love and violence were all things that I was very familiar with. So this image is really, I feel very like close to it because of that. So that was the hard part. When I make a picture, I want it to be accessible, and I want it to be contextual before anything else. I want people to be able to pull away as many layers as they want to. If I try hard enough, when I look back at some of my most substantial work I've made over the past few years, I can see the moments that have coaxed me into the human that I am now. One of my favorite journalists, Diane Rehm, I don't know if you guys are Diane Rehm fans, the last thing she said before she got off the air was that she thought people should listen more. And she was on the radio for such a long time and a journalist for so long that the fact that was like the thing that she wanted to impart to people, to listen to each other, I think is probably the most important thing that we can do. So when I'm making pictures, this is the oldest couple in North Carolina. I photographed them a couple years ago, or actually last year for our state, for their love issue. So when I think about the photos that I make, and I think about these two, I don't know, it makes me think about sharing moments, and when we share moments with people, I'm sure that they've shared many moments together, and none of them are going to be good, and none of them are going to be bad. And I think that kind of spills into who you are as a human being, as a creative person, as somebody who is a journalist or a writer or a painter or somebody who, you know, washes windows. It doesn't matter what you do. We all should kind of take our experiences and share them with each other, no matter if they're hard or if they're happy. It shouldn't disconnect us. It should kind of bring us together, and that'll make you a better storyteller too. There's Charlotte. It's always good. Have a picture of Charlotte in there. So I wrote this down, and this is kind of my kind of maybe parting words that I have for you. Just to stop and listen, of course. Figure out a way to use both your good and bad moments in your life. How they're going to apply to what you do. How are they going to fit into your life? The best and worst thing about a moment is that it's brief. You can write a description of it on a piece of paper, you can paint it on a canvas, or you can record it on film and keep it in a shoebox under your bed. If we allow ourselves, we can let those moments change us. We can let them fester inside of us until one day they are released to help us make sense of the world. So, that's it. That's all I have.